thank you very much. Thank you to our witnesses for this very important discussion. I want to begin with you, Chief Whiting McInnes, as a mother. We talk about safe and clean drinking water, but the right to have water that provides the dignity that children are entitled to. I represent communities, and I've seen communities that on the government's list of safe drinking water, they're on there, but they have to pump so much chlorine into the system because the pipes are old, they're dirty, there's so much organics in there that by the time the water reaches the bathtub, it damages the skin in such a way that we have children with horrific levels of black eczema all over them. And I remember a beautiful young girl with incredible long hair who told me she didn't like to wash her hair because it burned her scalp. What do we need to do to make sure that what is considered clean water is actually water that protects and gives the dignity that mothers and children and families have an innate right to?
Thank you. Through the chair, I think the answer is fairly simple. We need to provide the actual cost of operating and maintaining water treatment systems. And I think in its simplest form, that's what this comes down to is the actual cost of replacing outdated equipment, the actual cost of maintaining equipment, the actual cost of figuring out what's wrong with a system that you have to pump that much chlorine into it. And it feels very much, after many decades of living through this, like a political issue. We need the federal government to find the financial support to make these things happen.
Whole issue of adequate cost. I mean, I guess I'm a little cynical. I've been dealing with water issues for a quarter century, and I'm always wary of government making a promise. It seems they download the responsibility to the communities without giving the resources. Mr. Paul, I'd like to ask you on that. Neskantaga First Nation is in a land of beautiful lakes, and yet they've gone 28 years without clean drinking water. And if you go to Neskantaga, they have a brand new water treatment plant. But the pipes are all rotted. And I was trying to figure out, again, how is it possible that we could build a water treatment plant in a community without clean water and they still don't have it? And they said it was the same as if you put a new engine into a rotting Ford that's out by the side of the highway and tell people to drive. What is it going to take to ensure that we have the adequate funding in place to make sure that the whole life cycle of water and the infrastructure is there to guarantee the rights that people have?
I think in our perspective from Atlantic Canada, one of the important things that we saw was taking control over the jurisdiction of water through the creation of our own water authority that would take on the control and take on the full responsibility for water in all our communities that become part of the water authority. And one of the things in that jurisdiction and control through our water authority, it's about making that commitment, both financially and on the ground, that safe drinking water is going to be provided to every community from now and 25 and 30 years into the future. That includes from the source to the house and every step in between, and adequately figuring out the resourcing and the expertise required to make sure we have equity between our communities and our non-Indigenous brothers, basically.
So when you see, we always see the government making their big announcements of water, it doesn't seem like most of the money gets out the door. But it's about ending boiled water advisories. You can end a boiled water advisory. You can stand at the plant and say, check it out, it's clean, and nobody's drinking that water. And you know what? The media can't fly up to places like Cat Lake and Neskantaga to check that the public's being lied to. What's the disconnect between the real costs and what they're promoting?
I think there's a disconnect in terms of creating that detailed regulatory regime which does make the connection from the source to the end tap at the house. Because if those connections are not made clearly and defined in the costing regime, including the regulatory regime that exists. It's the only way to close all those gaps to actually produce quality water at the other end, whatever the situation. And using available technology and expertise that is available to do that. There is a cost to do that, and that's what you have to pay. You can't get a space shuttle to the moon without actually paying the cost. It's the same as water and wastewater.
I'm running out of time here. Vice Chief Pratt, I want to ask about the provinces, because one of the issues is that communities I represent are postage stamp size reserves. So yeah, we'll deal with the water there. But if a project goes on or there's damage to the watershed, those communities have to go through enormous legal battles because the province does not take the issue seriously. What is the concern of the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations about protecting not just source water but watershed and protecting the rights of the water that is in your traditional lands?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the honorable member for the question. Definitely, it's a huge concern here in Saskatchewan. Of course, you know, it's very public and common knowledge that we have had some challenges with the current Stas party government. We're working our best to try to improve the relationship and the situation. But there are a number of huge outstanding issues around the Natural Resource Transfer Agreement with Canada, otherwise known as the Constitution Act, as well as the announced Diefenbaker irrigation project that is going to severely impact the flow of the water through the Qu'Appelle, which is where my First Nation sits, as well as the inland Cumberland Delta at Cumberland House, which is, I believe, the third largest inland delta in the entire world, with over 160 million species of birds.
Mr. Pratt, I'm sorry, we're running over time. If you could just wrap your answer up. I'm sorry.
Yep, huge issue. Basically, we will have lots of challenges with the provinces, and you know, I think that's something that we all need to be concerned about around this. We have to make sure that the jurisdiction question is answered. Thank you.